Okay, good morning, everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but I think we've got it straightened out now. So I'm very delighted to present Kaimers Dotwala, who is the president of Mazda Yasni Zarathustri Dar e Meher Funds, which is a not-for-profit organization. What?
It's a tongue twister.
Yes, it is. He'll pronounce it better than I did. A not-for-profit organization established to construct the first consecrated Dar e Meher temple in the Western world. He's been a resident of Houston, Texas since 1975, one of the founding members of the Zoroastrian Association of Houston. He has served on its executive committee for many years and has been instrumental in founding the Zoroastrian Association of Houston Youth Group, and is a teacher of the Zarathustri Sunday School to students from middle to high school. He's done a lot of other work with the Zoroastrian community here. He's also active in interfaith activities. He's appeared on radio shows and talk shows, delivered lectures at the Second North American Gatha Conference, the Foundation for Contemporary Theology, and various other scholarly and multi-faith gatherings. He's also the president of Q Environmental, a company committed to sustainable environmental solutions through recycling and cutting-edge green technology. I'm not going to repeat his entire bio here. We also have it on our website. As I mentioned Friday night, the Zoroastrian community has been generally very good for the Jewish people in history. We lived under rule of a Zoroastrian authority for a large Jewish community lived under the rule of the Zoroastrian Empire in Persia for over 1,000 years. King Cyrus, famously recorded in the Bible as having issued the order for the Jews to return from the Babylonian exile and rebuild the city of Jerusalem, rebuild the temple. King Cyrus even offered to pay to help rebuilding the temple. Later, Xerxes, we believe, would be the king who's called Ahasuerus in the book of Esther. So the story of Esther takes place under Xerxes' rule. The historical accuracy of the text is a different matter, but at least scholars believe that it was Xerxes who was the king. I did mention the movie 300 or 600, whatever, in my sermon, 300. You know, the movie was told from the Greek perspective because the Greek historians are the ones who told the story. So they don't necessarily depict Xerxes as he was. He's depicted the way the Greeks thought of him. In any case, we also lived under Zoroastrian rule during Talmudic times. So what we call the Babylonian Talmud, the second major source of Jewish teaching, the Talmud, was not in Babylonia. I mean, that was a geographic area, but the Babylonian Empire had long since ceased. And it was actually under Zoroastrian Sassanid Empire from Persia that we thrived and flourished and ended up writing and editing the Babylonian Talmud that became a cornerstone of Jewish practice and belief today. So we owe a lot to the Zoroastrians, and that's why I'm very interested in hearing more about what Kai is going to tell us about his faith and tradition. Please welcome him.
Thank you, Rabbi Stevens. Would like to thank you for inviting us to come and share our faith with all of you this morning. Thank you all for attending. I'm going to be covering a lot of stuff going all over the place based on what he had asked me to cover. So if you all don't mind holding your questions till the end, I'll be happy to answer all questions even after the session finishes. If there's still some questions left, I'll be happy to sit in the corner somewhere and chat with you all. There's no restriction on time. But let me cover this as quickly as I can, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. So just a couple of pre-lecture points that I would like to make is that the prophet's name, in the Western world, he has been known as Zoroaster, and the correct nomenclature by which we would like to be known is Zarathustra. And he has, just like Christ has Jesus Christ, I mean, just like Jesus has a Jesus Christ, same way we call him Asho Zarathustra. So that's that's about the prophet. The followers of this faith are called Zartushtis, after Zarathustra, or again in the Western world, we are called Zoroastrians. We prefer to be called Zartushtis. His name for God is Ahura Mazda. As a matter of fact, it affected the gentleman in Japan so much that he named his company Mazda, the Mazda cars, the Mazda. First he came out with Mazda light bulbs. And the literal translation for Ahura Mazda is, Ahura is Lord, Mazda is wisdom. So Lord, wisdom. We lay a very heavy emphasis on wisdom. The name of the religion itself is not Zoroastrianism, but it is called Din-e-Mazda Yasni, which means religion of Mazda worship, because we are worshippers of Ahura Mazda, Lord of Wisdom. So that's what the religion of Mazda worship. So now I will just cover a little bit of the history real quick. So the roots of Zoroastrianism, as it's known in the Western world, or Din-e-Mazda Yasni, stretch back more than 3,000 years to ancient Persia and the prophet Ashur-Zarathustra, known to the Western world as Zoroaster. The time period is Bronze Age, about 1800 years BC, and the location is somewhere on the steppes of Central Asia, near modern-day Tajikistan. The old historical thing was that it was in a place called Balkh, which is really in Afghanistan these days, but modern history, looking at the translations that the Western scholars have done, places it in Tajikistan. This is somewhat to give you an idea. This is whereabouts he's said to have existed and spread his message and moved around. So Ashur-Zarathustra appears on the world stage when the peaceful life of the nomadic pastoralists was thrown into grief and strife. As a matter of fact, in one of his works, there's a dialogue between Zarathustra, between the world and Ahura Mazda, where the the soul of the world asks Ahura Mazda, why have you created us with all this turmoil, this anger, this ravaging and everything? And so on, it goes on. And it's kind of strange. We are finding ourselves in a similar world these days, unfortunately. But anyway, so that's where Zarathustra appears in the life of the nomadic pastoralists. He himself is from a priestly family, but the priests belonging to the old religion. At the same time, there were the marauding nomadic tribes whose religion was based on pillage and destruction, which basically was that they would go, they would swoop down on the villages of the pastoralists, they would grab their chickens, their cows, their goats, etc., grab it and take off with it, and burn the villages. So that was what they were doing. And they would be doing pillage. And so what kind of a belief system did they have? So the pastoralists were peaceful, hardworking, they tended the livestock, and they prayed to their deities for rain, good weather, good health, kind of like what our farmers do even today. And the marauders, who were nomadic and warlike, they prayed to their deities to give them strength to win in battle, to get more loot from their enemies, so that they could give a part of that loot as offerings to their gods. And then again, why? Because they wanted that strength to go out and get more offerings for the gods. So that's where the cycle kind of continues. The belief system was you're born, you grew up, you died, and you were reincarnated. And that cycle continued. Heaven, at that time period, in the Bronze Age, was reserved only for royalty and priests. A common person's soul was supposed to languish in sort of a twilight zone, which was neither heaven nor hell. And it's interesting because in the Jewish faith, I think you're familiar with a word called Sheol, I believe, where it's a kind of a twilight zone where the souls used to go, but it changes as they progress. So under such a scenario, for the first time, appeared a young man belonging to the priestly family, who bursts onto the world stage with a vision of a unique way of life and a view of the world which revolutionized the society he lived in, as well as other world major religions downstream. Ashur Zarathustra's message is in the 5 Gathas which are left. A whole bunch of them were destroyed by Alexander when he burned Persepolis. So what we have left is just 5 of his works. And these are his hymns. They are all in verse. They are the first poetic compositions in human history which can be ascribed without doubt to a known author. And this, again, is based on Western research. In the Gathas, what are some of the concepts? He gives us the concept of an all-good, beneficent, and single God. Very important. A concept of Asha, which I won't go into at present because it's very, very philosophical. Human free will, very important. Human free will is very, very important, and that's why human beings also have a responsibility to use that judiciously. The concept of heaven and hell, final judgment, salvation, human stewardship over creations in nature, and perfection of life upon this earth. Because according to our story of creation, life upon this earth was created in perfect harmony. It is the other negative force, which is called Angamenu, which comes and messes with that harmony. And so it is the job of human beings to come back and bring that world back to its perfect stage of harmony. So that's part of the Gothic concept. His vision, he spoke of a universal God, a perfect God, a God of wisdom and light, a God from whom nothing evil or destructive can emanate. No evil comes from Ahura Mazda. Sickness does not come from Ahura Mazda according to our theology. Destruction, war, none of these things come from Ahura Mazda. So each human has in them the ability to be godlike, and I will hit upon that a little later when I talk about the attributes of Ahura Mazda. Zarathustra said that any deity which caused death and destruction, encouraged looting and pillage, required blood sacrifice, was not worthy of worship. Now remember, he was in a time frame, in a time period where the marauders were basically, their deities needed blood sacrifice, they needed gifts to be brought to them from the raids that they carried out. So he totally addresses that in this statement over here. So what was the relationship, according to Zarathustra, of a person with Ahura Mazda? It is not one of father and child, nor one of submission, but rather one of relative equality. We have a seat at Ahura Mazda's table. Is one of an eternally good, perfect God, and that of a friend to a friend, and a friend to all. And we find this in his Gathas, where when he's talking with Ahura Mazda, he's telling Ahura Mazda, tell me truly, Ahura Mazda, as a friend would confide to a friend. Why have, and then there's a whole list of things. Why is there a star? Why are the stars? Why does the sun move in the way it moves? Why does the moon come and why does the tide ebb and flow, etc., etc.? And you find something similar in Isaiah. I forget which exact verse of Isaiah, but you find something similar in Isaiah. So there is no sense of fear in this relationship. We do not fear Ahura Mazda because he is our friend. Since we do not fear our friends, if they are truly friends, there's a loving relationship, but it's more out of friendship. So the essence of Ashur Zarathustra's message emanates from the Gathas, wherein he states that in the very beginning, there were twin modalities or mentalities. This is a very basic foundational concept of Zarathustra's Gathas. Now, if you were to ask most of the Zarathustris today, tell me a little bit what are the tenets of Dinamazdiasni, they'll probably say good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. And they're not incorrect. But then my question to them always is, show me a religion which is talking about bad thoughts, bad words, and bad deeds. We are not. So I mean, this concept in a different way is present in all the faith groups. They all espouse good things. But what is unique to Zarathustra's vision is this concept that from the very beginning, there were two twin modalities or mentalities. The good mentality, or Spenta Manu, and Spenta Manu chooses to progress life and to progress Aura Mazda's good creation. The evil mentality, called Angra Manu, which chooses non-life. It is destructive by nature. It just wants to go in and cause harm, anger. So when we get angry, we should not be getting angry. As a Zarathustri, I should not be getting angry because I am siding with Angra Manu because he's corrupting my mind. So our mind is like a battlefield constantly. Whenever we are out trying to do any activity, anything that we are planning to do, there's a constant tussle. One side is saying, hey, do it, and the other side is saying, hey, don't do it, or, you know, this is where you're going wrong. So, another thing, if you remember, I told you that it was, in the old days, that it was cyclical in nature, where you were born, you grow up, you died in battle, and you were reincarnated, and you came back again, that cyclical concept. Well, Zarathustra takes that cyclical concept of birth and death, and it gives it a linear time frame of 12,000 years. Now, these 12,000 years are not 365-day years, but I do not know how many day years they are. But they definitely are not 365-day years, because if that was the case, this went a long time ago. So in the 12,000-year time period, this cosmic drama and battle will take place between the sides of light and the sides of darkness, between the sides of Aura Mazda's Spenta Manu, the progressive spirit, and Angra Manu's evil mentalities. So this battle is right now in what we call as the mixture stage, where there's some good going on, some bad going on, and so it's broken up into 4 3,000-year time periods. The first one is the Menok state. That's the state where creation actually takes place, where the good creation takes place, but somehow also the evil creation takes place. There are certain insects, etc., which are created by Ahriman, according to the story. Then there is the Getic, or the physical state. That's when Aura Mazda creates the physical world. And at that time, he speaks with all the souls which were existing with him at that time, and says, well, we're going to continue this guy Ahriman coming and harassing us all the time, but there is a way to defeat him. We can have a physical plane where if you all decide, using your free will, to go and engage him in battle. Battle of what? Battle of knowledge, battle of wisdom, battle to use your free will not to do the wrong things in life. Then we will have, later on, total harmony restored once again. And so we are in this mixture period right now, and then there is the period of separation. That is where resurrection takes place. And we call it freshocarity, the making wonderful. That is where all the souls who have died over the time period will go through a molten metal test, which will basically distill everything that was negative in those souls and remove the negativity and bring the earth back to its total harmony. So those are the 4 stages that he talks about. Then we have the 6 Amesha Spentas and Aura Mazda. So the Amesha Spentas are, you could equate them to the archangels. They're not exactly that, but we also consider them to be the attributes of Aura Mazda. And so on one side, they are protectors of the good universe, creation. On the other side, they also form the ethical kernel of a Zarathustri's lifestyle. How does that happen? So at the time of creation, the sky is formed, then there are the waters which are formed, then the earth is placed on the waters where it floats, then the plants are created, the cattle is created, human beings are created, and a very last one is fire is created. So when that happens, that again, each one of these Amesha Spinters is overseeing each one of those 7 creations and making sure that that creation is well protected. Now, as an ethical infrastructure, this is what makes it different. So if you were to look at it, when you look at Vahumana, the good mind, if you were to open your good mind and allow the progressive spirit to enter you, then best order will start happening in your lifestyle. When best order starts happening in your lifestyle, your surroundings, your immediate kingdom, and then the kingdom, and then the surroundings outside of that. So from the home to the town, from the town to the city, from the city to the state to the country, etc. You will see a kind of peace spanning from there. When that happens, it creates a certain kind of devotion within the person who is practicing this form of thought. When that person is practicing this form of devotion, that person slowly but surely reaches a form of perfection. And when that person reaches a form of perfection, that person reaches immortality and becomes God-like. So immortality doesn't mean that the person never dies, but the person leaves behind footsteps on the sands of time. We all know, I mean, you all have names of your leaders over here, we have names of our leaders over here. They have become immortal through their deeds that they carried on over here, through things that they did over here. So they may have gone a long time ago, generations ago, but they are immortalized, and that is what we mean by immortality. So the human beings are comprised of 5 immortal parts: life or ahu, dana or religion, bodha or knowledge, urvan or soul, and fravashi, the God essence. So that is the Kherpa. The Kherpa is the astral plane surrounding a human being. And some people are able to even photograph these things using Carillion photography. Then Tanu, the physical body that has been given to us and that we maintain and protect. Then the breath of life, which enters that physical body and which helps the body gain life. Then the Urvan, or soul. But besides the soul, we believe we have something which we call as the Fravashi. It is called as the guardian spirit, but in reality, it is the God essence. It is uncorruptible, unchangeable, it is non-judgmental, it is there always trying to guide us and protect us and help us, but it is not corrupted. So, the Kherpa, the astral plane, is believed to link man to his original abode, which is the endless light, where he was created. It is sometimes identified as aura, which is believed to reflect the inner state of man's psychological world. The Urvan, or soul, is the spiritual perceptor directing that helps man to generate a thought, word, and deed from a multitude of choices. It is deemed to be the decision maker in an individual. So the soul is going to bear the consequences of your decisions at the time when it passes on to that big sky. It is the spiritual power of God in humanity. For in the soul is seated the faculty of comprehension, in order that it may become knowledge about the religion. A soul is that which can never be destroyed or eternally damned. A soul is never totally destroyed or eternally damned. And it is judged at the bridge of the separator. What is this bridge of the separator? We will come to that when we talk about death and the hereafter. But basically, real quick, when a person passes away, the soul travels from this earth under the protection of a couple of angels over to Aura Mazda's abode. And there is a bridge of the separator over there. And it depends on whether you have more good deeds or less good deeds. If your deeds have not been greater in goodness, then basically the bridge starts narrowing. So that's how it separates. And if you've been really, really evil, then that soul falls into hell, where there's a lot of commotion going on. So that is the bridge of the separator, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. The Fravashis. It is believed that the Fravashis first existed in spiritual state and aided Aura Mazda to fashion the prototypes of the physical creation of the sky, waters, earth, plants, cattle, and man, the 7 creations. Every human being possesses a Fravashi which acts as an observer in one's life. The Fravashi does not interfere with the decision-making process, and hence, unlike the soul, the Fravashi is not judged at the bridge of the separator, because Fravashi has not made the choices. The soul has made the choices. Fravashis are seen to represent God essence within man. Fravashis possess the wisdom of all knowledge, which links them to Aura Mazda. They are believed to be the spiritual protectors of humanity. And this is the artistic concept of a Fravashi. If you look at ancient Persian ruins in Iran or in the mountaintops, etc., you see similar carvings over there. And that is the artist's concept of what a Fravashi is like. There's a lot of symbolism and meaning to these things. So, here is this young guy who pops onto the world stage from a religious family. His father and grandfather and all those people were priests of that old religious faith. And all of a sudden, he is giving these people something which blows their mind. To them, it is all BS. That doesn't fall in line with what their religion had taught them in the ancient times. And this young guy is coming and telling them all these things, but it's making sense to the general population somehow. So the nobles and the priests, of course, the nobles and the priests were really upset about this. And they were upset at this young guy because he was saying things and asking people to do things which went at times totally against what they said. They believed in reincarnation. He said, no, reincarnation is not there. This is what's happening. So all of a sudden, posters start appearing in the towns, in the cities, and the countries. Wanted, Zarathustra. And he was persecuted. So I'll jump from there to a little bit about our form of worship. At the heart of Zarathustri worship is the sacred fire, which represents righteousness and truth. The fire is kept burning at the fire altar, which is known as the Afraganyu. That's the vessel in which you see it burning, to which a priest tends to for 24 hours a day. Some of these fires have been kept burning in Iran and in India for hundreds of years. And some of them would have been burning in Iran for much longer than that, except, unfortunately, at the time of the Arab conquest, a lot of those were desecrated. So the fire is tended 24/7 by priests. There are 2 types of fire temples, actually 3 types of fire temples that we have. One is like a cathedral fire, which is the greatest one, which is called the Atash-e-Behram, where the prayers are done on it 24/7, but 5 times a day they are fed sandalwood and frankincense, etc. The slightly other, and that fire is composed of 16 different fires and an interesting ceremony that goes through it. It's a lecture in itself. And then the next one is called the Atish-Adaran, which is like a church, the lower grade fire, which is made up of 4 fires, composed of 4 fires, taking into consideration the tradespeople who existed at that time period. The fires were taken from the 4 different trade groups, and the soldier and the governor. And then the last one is the Atish-Dadgah, which is basically the hearth fire, the fire of your home. So you can go ahead and have a fire in your home, and your hearth. In those days, of course, the hearth had fire there, and that was just your regular home fire. So the main fire at the Zoroastrian Cathedral, Iransha in Udwada, India, has been burning constantly since it was lit over 1,200 years ago. This particular fire was brought all the way from Iran over to India on the 3 ships, the 3 boats, which came when our forefathers had to leave Iran to save the religion. So it's an interesting story over there too. But this fire has been burning constantly for 1,200 years. Then we have an initiation ceremony where a Zartushti child, whether it is a man or a woman, a boy or a girl, they are initiated into the faith at the age of somewhere between 12 to 15, depending on how quickly the child has matured. Excuse me. Sudrapushi ceremony. Yeah. I think he said he's from Iran, so I was telling that in Iran they have the Sudrapushi ceremony. Yeah. So that's the Navjot ceremony, and they are endowed with these sacred vestments. The one you see, which looks like a shirt, it's called a sudre, which is basically your moral compass. That little crescent-shaped thing at the back that you see, that is your pocket of good deeds that you fill all throughout the day, and then towards the night it comes and gets collected over here. So that's your pocket of good deeds that you're supposed to fill all during the day. And this is known as kushti. It is made out of 72 lamb's hair, which is woven together by the ladies. Most of them are wives of priests, and they weave it, and it is woven inside out. And after they finish weaving it completely, then they put a long needle through it because it's hollow, and they pull it out so the inside becomes out and the outside goes in. And that's the kushti. The kushti is your direction finder, and it's talismanic, so it protects the wearer continuously. And so we pray 5 times a day, and we do our kushti prayers 5 times a day. So that's those are the vestments which a child anywhere between 12 to 15 is invested with, and then they continue to have it. Unfortunately, sometimes in the Western world, they don't necessarily follow through with it. So personally, I belong more to the traditional side, and yeah, we do. So I was asked to speak a little bit about the rituals, festivals, and celebrations. Festivals in Dinamazdiasni fulfill a dual role in which the participants are enjoined to propitiate and worship and be joyous and happy. Every religious ceremony that we Zartushtis have always ends with food and drink. So we believe, and as you can see from my girth, we believe in good food and good drinks and a happy lifestyle. Our very basic prayer that is taught to a child, young child, is happiness to that person that gives happiness to others. It's the Hashem Vuhu prayer, and that's the most basic prayer that the child is taught. So we lay a heavy emphasis on happiness. So in Dinamazdiasni, there are 7 great festivals of the year. And these 7 festivals are linked to the 7 physical creations. Remember we talked about the sky, the plants, the waters, the animals, etc. And the Ameshaspentas, they are the heptad who oversee those creations. During the Sasanian times, the first 6 festivals came to be known as Kahambars. And the 7th and most important celebration is known as Nowruz, or New Day. And it usually falls between the 20th and the 21st of March, because that is the day of the vernal equinox. And this year also it falls at that time period. But because the earth is wobbling and moving a little bit, it starts falling more on the 20th at night and something. And for those of you who might be interested, Asia Society is throwing a grand celebration, I believe on the 17th of March. I don't think there is any charge to it, but it's free, and so I was surprised to find the different communities that celebrate Nowruz, because growing up, we always thought that it was a very Zoroastrian festival, which it is, but it's also a Persian festival. So all the lands which the Persians used to control, those people, even today, if they are non-Zoroastris, they're observing Nowruz. So you find Nowruz being celebrated besides Iran in Azerbaijan and Afghanistan, of all places, and in Tajikistan, all the stans, in Uzbekistan. So it is observed throughout. It is one of the largest festivals. I was surprised to read this. But it's the largest festivals that takes place in the world in different forms. So our concept of evil. What do we consider evil? So in Ashur Zarathustra's message, the origin of evil does not emanate from Aura Mazda, as I mentioned. It is other than from Aura Mazda, because Aura Mazda is all good and all perfect, and all perfect, all-wise being cannot create that which is imperfect. And if he does, then he cannot be worshipped as God or can be called as a good being. In this view, by ceasing to be perfectly good, God ceases to be God for us. Evil apparently comes into existence as a state of excess or deficiency in God's otherwise good creations. And we Zarathustrians, and I know we have this in common with the Jewish faith as well, we are always trying to remove unhappiness from every community in the world. We're always trying to do whatever with schools, with hospitals, with health facilities, etc. And you will find us that even though we are such a small community, if you were to go to India or Pakistan, the number of hospitals and schools that have been built by our forefathers over there. So we are trying to do away with the deficiency in God's good creations. Thus, evil cannot come from God, but the state of moving away from God, just like darkness does not come from light, but is the result of moving away from light. So I do a little experiment in my Sunday school class. I light a candle, and you see the glow of the candle, the whole room is dark, and then you see the shadows, and as they start moving away from light, you start seeing more darkness and more darkness and more darkness. And so it's kind of like that. So evil is that which opposes good. It is parasitical to the principle of good. Interestingly, and thank God for that, evil cannot exist by itself. If good did not exist, evil could not exist. It's kind of your reflection in the mirror. You exist, but your reflection actually does not exist the same way. Its source stems from an excess or deficiency within the world in which we live. So our concept of sin. Sin is any act that progresses creation to progress towards righteousness is a good act. Any act that regresses or moves creation away from progress is not a righteous act. It's a sinful act. For example, as an environmental company, if I was to dump dirty water, chemical water, all that kind of stuff, just so I can make more money into a stream or something like that, that would be a non-righteous act. That would not be allowed for me as a Zarathushtri. Just as an example. But that's kind of what we're talking about over here. So I will talk about death and hereafter. The soul is not permanently condemned to hell. So I told you that at the bridge of the separator, the soul falls into hell if they've done too many bad deeds during their lifetime. But interestingly, hell is not a permanent place in our concept of hell. Rather, it is relegated to hell more for cleansing than for total punishment, torment, and suffering. So, although the description of hell, which is there in a very ancient text of ours, which is very similar to Divine Comedy, when you read Dante's book, you find a lot of commonality over there. But basically, hell is not a permanent place. It is there just for those who, with a scientific background, it's as if you were to take something which is mixed with water and junk and stuff like that, and it's all mixed up and emulsified, and then you boil it and distill it, that it becomes steam, and clean water collects in another flask, and the junk stays left behind. Very similar concept. So all your evil mentality, things that you have done, basically finally gets distilled over into the other. The goodness goes into the other flask, so that you can move on towards progressing towards harmony. We Zarathushtis do not cremate or bury our dead, because this would pollute the earth. And earth should be a place for the living, and it should not, and the dead should not take it away, because we believe that once death is not caused by Aura Mazda, so death is caused by Ahriman. It's the temporary triumph of Ahriman over a living body, whether it's an animal or a human being. So that when the death has happened, we do our prayers, we cleanse the body, we do all the rituals that we are supposed to do, all the prayers that are supposed to be done. But after they are done, we do not want to put it into the earth, where it could eventually, possibly, pollute the earth. And because we do honor fire, we do not want to cremate. Unfortunately, over here, we cremate and we bury. But fortunately for us, there is a Zarathushti style of burial, which is basically that you can put bricks before you put it on the soil, and the body is placed on bricks. But in Texas, it is the law that you have to be put in a concrete liner before the body is placed into the grave. So it works out well for us. So, however, the Zarathushtis place the bodies in the old country, in Pakistan and India and Iran. We place those in a place called the Tower of Silence, which used to be at a great distance away from where people lived, etc., so that nobody would get polluted in any way or form. And the Tower of Silence is a diagrammatical drawing of what a Tower of Silence is like. These four are wells, and these are channels, and then these are platforms where the bodies are placed of a man, a woman, a child, etc. So there are different sizes, and then all the bodily fluids flow down into a central pit, and it goes through. The pit is lined with lime and charcoal and some other stuff, and it filters out all these bodily fluids so that the final material going towards Earth is not filled with things that could be dangerous. And still at the same time, it is segregated and it's cleansed completely every so many uses. This is kind of what it looks like in Yazd in Iran. So this is where the dead bodies are placed. It's called a dakhmo, or the Tower of Silence. So where does Ashur Zarathustra's vision take all this? So about 1,000 years after its founder's life, and over 1,000 miles from his birthplace, Zoroastria's message enters the teachings of Ezra and Isaiah in Israel, and the thoughts of Pythagoras, Plato, and Aristotle in Greece. The influence of that vision. This vision helps a young Persian prince by the name of Cyrus, or whose actual Persian name is Kurush, establish a great Persian empire. It frees the Jews from bondage, and he writes the first charter of human rights. And a copy of this had come to our museum in Houston some time ago. I don't know if you got a chance to see it. So again, it enters the messages of Ezra and Isaiah. So you all know, I don't need to read this for you because you probably know it backward forward. Isaiah 44:28. Isaiah of Cyrus, etc. Then Isaiah 45:1 clearly shows. Now, they call him the anointed, but apparently that wasn't the anointment with oil from what I read in the books, so I'm not quite sure. It is just that the message, that Yahweh wanted the message to go out that I have chosen him to have kingship and to help you all. So I think that's what he's talking about over here. Then in Ezra, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, in order to fulfill the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah, the Lord moved the heart of Cyrus, king of Persia, to make a proclamation through his realm and also put it in writing. So this is kind of a little schematic thing of the same stuff. On the Cyrus cylinder, the translation kind of reads, he describes his pious deeds that he has performed after his conquest. He restored peace to Babylon and other cities sacred to Marduk, because Marduk was the Babylonian god, freeing their inhabitants from their yoke, and he brought relief to their dilapidated housing, putting an end to their main complaints. He repaired the ruined temples in the cities he conquered, restored their cults, and returned their sacred images, as well as their former inhabitants, which Nabonidus had taken to Babylon. And interestingly, although Cyrus had sanctioned the building of the temple in Jerusalem, and he had spoken with the Jewish leaders to go ahead and put it into action, Cyrus gets killed in a battle. And so that is left incomplete. And it is Cyrus's follower, Darius the Great, who the Jewish community comes to and says, you know, we were promised this. So now that Cyrus is no more, is this going to happen or not? And he says, once we give our word, we will keep it. And so he kept his word. So even though Cyrus was not around, that word was kept. And it is also interesting because we were making a movie on Dinamaz Diasni many years ago called On the Wings of Fire. You might still find it on YouTube. And a Jewish gentleman on the East Coast, he contacted us because we were fundraising. And he wrote us a check for $250,000 and said, I'm paying for what you all had done in the Babylonian times. And it was so very touching. It was very touching. But so, you never know when you're doing something, how many years later something is going to come back. To haunt you or to help you. But yes, so near the end of the inscription of the Cyrus cylinder, he highlights his restoration of Babylon's city wall, saying, I saw within it an inscription of Ashurbanipal, a king who preceded me. The remainder is broken and missing. What kind of government did Cyrus have? It was the first multicultural, multi-faith state where all were treated equally and with respect. Long before the concept of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So Cyrus, his life was written by a Greek author by the name of Xenophon in a book called Cyropedia, and that, it is said, influenced our founding fathers and inspired Thomas Jefferson, whose personal copy is in the Library of Congress. Coming to an end, some points to remember are: Ahura Mazda is all-wise, all-good, all-perfect. There is nothing imperfect like illness, anger, or destruction can originate or come from Ahura Mazda. Every human being has a spark of Ahura Mazda in them. Therefore, human beings are also wholly good. Only their choices and the resulting acts, if the choice is wrong, can be evil. So the human being is not evil, their choices are evil. It is also because of this reason that there has always been total equality between the sexes from Zarathustra's time. So I'll expand a little bit on this. You remember I showed you the 5 parts of a human being, and one of them was a fravashi. That fravashi is present in every man and every woman. And because that is the God essence, the God spark, you cannot insult the God spark with inequality because somebody happens to be a woman, or somebody happens to be a man, or somebody happens to be something else. So sometimes it's a tough hoe to follow in some of the interactions that you might go through. But that's basic. That is where the concept of equality comes out, from that fravashi part of it. Zarathustra's vision is founded on the functioning of the laws of Asha in our daily decision-making process. I think I already talked about that. Our theology believes that salvation is earned through individual actions and not preordained by way of destiny or fate. We do not believe in kismet. Material world is more important, stronger than the spiritual hereafter. So, as I was speaking with the rabbi, I believe that the Jewish faith and the Zarathustri faith, and there might be some others too, I find that we believe more in the here and now, about our actions in the here and now, in the physical world. That's why we were sent to use our free will to help bring this world to that total harmony the way it was created. So, yeah, we believe in the hereafter, but all our actions need to be done over here. But it seems to me that Christianity and Islam, basically, their emphasis is more on don't worry about all the beatings you're going to take in this world, and don't worry about things that are happening to you that are no good, etc., etc. Bear it, grin and bear it, because you will find the 72 virgins in heaven, or there will be wine flowing over there, even though I have forbidden it over here, etc. So I think for our communities, it's here and now. For some other communities, it's when they reach heaven. Pleasure and happiness are God-given birthrights to be nurtured and cherished. So you won't find us, flagellating ourselves for punishing us because we are evil or something like that. So you won't find us doing any of that. The life is a constant battle between the forces of good and evil, and it is a person's duty on earth to use his or her free will to choose good and assist Ahura Mazda. Judgment of the soul at death, final battle between the forces of good and evil resulting in resurrection, called Frashokerity, and total defeat of Ahriman in a given time period. That is guaranteed, total defeat of Ahriman in a given time period. So these are some famous Zarathushtis. I don't know if you recognize her. That's a lady by the name of Princess Kambada who acted in a movie called The Wrath of Khan. I'm sorry, that is Freddie Mercury of Queen, and Zubin Mehta, who led the Israeli Philharmonic for many, many, many years. That is Princess Kambada. That gentleman was the CEO, now he has retired, called Ratan Tata, and the Tatas own a lot of stuff in India and all over the world. They now own Jaguar and Land Rover. And I don't know if you remember at one time when India was attacked by the terrorists, and they had gone and shot up the whole place, that one of their hotels, the Taj Hotel, was shot up as well. And the hawkers who sat outside his hotel, but basically everything was shut down. So he paid them for nearly a year so that those people could exist. And one of the first there's a place called Tata Town where their factories and plants are in India, and they have a system whereby the children are brought along with their mothers. So they had the school system. Long time ago, before the United States established its welfare system, there was a certain type of welfare system that this group had established. So just some of the things. So, any burning questions? Yes, sir. I'll answer him and I'll come to you. No, go ahead. Yes, sir. My pleasure. That's fine. Yes. It's actually a very good question, but it again depends on, we are not in different branches as such, but this kind of stuff is beginning to happen in the Western world. Well, it's even there in India and Pakistan now. But basically, yes, as the world becomes more educated, etc., different concepts and questions do come up. But when you look at some of these concepts, which are so very, very basic in nature, for example, the action you are about to do or the thought you are about to carry out, is that progressing the good creation or regressing the good creation? That should be the first question a Zarathustra should be asking themselves. So that will give a certain answer to that person. Because at the end of the day, although we are a community, we are very individualistic. So no, we don't have, although we have high priests in India who are more geared towards rituals, etc., and they answer questions affecting our lifestyle, but at the same time, we don't have like a pope or a priest of priests or who is going to dictate to the community what is there. So for example, in North America, they have what is known as a morbid council, which is the council of the priests. But basically, by coincidence, most of the priests who belong to that council are more of a liberal bent of mind. Nothing wrong with that. But basically, so if there is something that they come up with which does not match our way of thinking, we would definitely not follow it. If it matches our way of thinking, we would follow it. So yes, there are certain nuances and things that happen, but there is no central body that has that power. Like, if the Pope says something, then it pretty much is dictated, it goes down. So that, yeah. I think the gentleman at the back. So, yes, again, we as traditional Mazdiasnis do not proselytize. The reason we do not proselytize is because we believe that the souls at the time of creation made a choice. In our story of creation, the souls are asked, and they willingly go on earth, and they made a choice. And based on certain choices, they were sent down on earth. And as I explained to my students, imagine, if you will, that that the United States needed to fight a battle, and if the only armed forces they had was the Air Force, what would happen? How would we fight on the high seas? How would we capture land and take control of the land? So every different group has something that they are responsible for maintaining. So in the same way, we have a certain set of souls which came down as Zarathushtis, a certain set of souls which came down as Jews, a certain set of souls which came down as Christians, a certain set of souls which came down as Muslims. So, so that is the way I explain it, not necessarily that that is an absolute accurate explanation, but no, we do not proselytize. However, presently, because there are people who marry out of the fold, so their spouse and their children do join the fold or become part of the community, but again, they do things a little differently. But we do not actively proselytize. And actually, if you see, proselytization comes about more in the latter-day religious groups. I don't think there is. I know that now amongst your community, you do allow certain conversion to take place from the mother's side, but I don't know if there is active proselytization that is going on. Him, and then I'll come to you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I used to work with a fellow who had the same ending to his name. Is that some connection like Levy and Cohen?
No, it basically just happened that when our forefathers had settled in India, when the British came, they needed to have surnames, because usually it used to be so-and-so, son of so-and-so, like I would be Kaimer's son of Firoz. So basically, then whatever trade they were in, or whatever kind of merchandise they were selling, or what kind of service they were involved in, so all those kind of things entered into getting the last names. But that, I think it's more right around the colonial time period in India. Yeah, so. Could you just ask that question again, but a little louder, please? I didn't get the complete question. Yes, so basically, as I stated earlier, there are two prophets who are supposed to have started with the idea of monotheism, and there is Zoroastrianism and there's Moses, and then after that, of course, comes Christ and Muhammad, etc. So they started with the concept of one. Not one God, one supreme God. So in other words, there is another term which is being used these days. It's called henotheism, which basically is there's a supreme God, and then there are a number of other deities who are his helpers. So that's another form. And then there is still polytheism going on in certain faith groups. And even if you consider certain religious groups as being polytheistic when you really start digging into those faith groups. You find out that they also have a supreme God. For example, amongst the Hindus, it's although they may have different avatars they believe in, but they have one supreme deity from whom all these things flow. So it seems that humanity's mind somehow flowed towards a factual thing that was happening at different time periods in our history. Because remember, those guys that we opposed, whom we call as the Devayasnis, that is believers of evil, they are the ones who believed in their gods needing all these sacrifices so that they could help them. The Mazdiasnis did not believe in those kind of sacrifices. Similarly, I'm sure in the other faith groups, there might have been opposition faiths, but the faith groups themselves didn't believe in that kind of religion to follow. The answer. Good. Let me finish you. Did I finish your answer? Okay. Again, ask me, but loudly. Supreme God, yes. Neither. I told you, the Supreme God, the name that Ashok Zarathustra gives is Ahura Mazda, Lord Wisdom. No, we do honor fire, and fire is part of a symbolism, because when you put anything on fire, it purifies it. Also, fire is light. Also, without fire, none of us would be living, none of our dogs would be living. Oh, by the way, for those of you who are dog lovers, you'll find this interesting. We believe at the bridge of the separator, our dogs will come to meet us and show us the way up over there. So take good care of your dogs. 1 second, sir. Let me answer. I think I'll answer her and I'll come to you, because she had yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes. So yes. Yes. So we have a physical temple in Houston. We just initiated that particular one a year ago on March 21st. It is called the Atash Kadeh, Fire Temple. And but besides that, we also have our center within walking distance from there. So, and there are about 650 Zarathustri men, women, and children in the Houston area, in the greater Houston area. 650. Let me answer him, and I'll come to him, and then, yeah.
I have 3 questions. I hope they're not long answers.
All right.
First is there a creation story of how the world was created?
Yes.
Second question is, when you worship, what is your worship experience like? What do you worship for? And the third is, at the end of this 12,000-year cycle, what's going to happen?
So, all right. So the short answer is, to the first question is, I answered you. I said yes. I forget what the question was. The first one. Yes, there's a story of creation, and it's available in a book called The Bandahishan. You have it in English. You can Google it and read it like a storybook. But our story of creation is different from the Christian story of creation. So that's your second question was, how do we worship? Okay, so as I showed you, the Zarathustri worship is always in front of a illuminated body. So we will worship in front of a fire, or if the fire is not possible, the sun, which is one of the brightest fires, or we'll do it in front of the moon. So it has to be an illuminated body. So we do not worship the fire or the sun or the moon, but we worship Aura Mazda's good creations through the fire, the sun, the moon, through waters, etc. So that's how we worship. And the worship experience, basically, it's more of a one-on-one experience, although we have congregational prayers. So the one-on-one experience is what we are supposed to do 5 times a day, and that you could be doing in your house, or you could be doing it at a fire temple, or you could be doing it out in the open by the seaside, etc. So that's the worship. Now, there's a congregational worship experience which is called Jashan, and over there, basically, all the 7 good creations are represented on the mat, and then the priests do their prayers. Now, this is something which is the very first class I teach. Zarathustra somehow deciphers that we are surrounded by energy, that everything is an interplay of energy. And when we start looking into science, we start seeing that he wasn't that wrong. We today live in a field of energy, in a sea of energy. And the prayers basically are to energize the sound energy is taking that and creating a certain energy force, which is then building an energy force in the area where those prayers are being said. So that's basically what is happening. The ancients used to call it, we are creating an angel over there, or a yazata in our language. And so, but basically what it is we are creating an energy force. Every religion, I think, at their prayers, because our prayers are known as matravani, means thought-provoking prayers. So these are mantras. These are not just help me God do this. Or help me. That is a conversation you can have with God anytime driving a car or whatever you are doing, taking a shower, whatever. But the actual prayer part of it is a matravani, where you are continuing to add to that energy field that exists in this world. And that's the 12,000 years. 12,000. At that time, the final Frashokariti, the making wonderful, will happen. That is basically all that evil will be totally defeated and pushed out of this physical world, and all the souls will go through molten metal, so that anything that they were corrupted with gets cleansed out, because most of the souls who were there from before, they have been cleansed out by distillation. So same way they go, and then they have again, being Zartushtis, they have a huge feast, and after the feast, we live happily ever after. It's not the end of the world. It's not, no, the world does not get destroyed. The world does not get, the whole idea is not to destroy the world. The whole idea is to bring about harmony in the world.
We'll take one more question, maybe.
You choose, whoever.
So he's going to be here. He's going to stay here, so you can ask.
I'll be happy to answer your, yeah, but choose the person who you'd like.
Okay, let's see. Who hasn't asked a question? Oh, boy.
How about last two? How about last two? Last, oh.
Okay, all right.
Right.
Three commandments. Jewish people, they have 10 commandments. We have 3 commandments. Pendoran, Bukdoran, Kirdaran,
Good thoughts, good words, good
Mention
words.
that again, yeah. That's important, yeah.
that's really, if you can say
Yes.
it
Yes, I had mentioned that it's good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. That's the most basic Zatushti thing that when you ask any Zatushi, they will say. But I also went on to say that the unique sales proposition that Zarathustra gives is from the very beginning, 2 mentalities existed, and that is what is causing conflict in this world. Yes. I'm sorry? Am I? No. As a religion, we are not vegetarians, although there is a vast group of us, I'm not, a vast group of us who are vegetarians, especially out of them who live in India and who have been influenced by theosophy. I think they are vegetarians. No restrictions against eating. Eating anything in excess is wrong. Drinking anything in excess is wrong, but no restrictions against eating or drinking.
I know there's a lot more questions, but he's going to be here, so you'll have an opportunity to ask him.
Go ahead, last.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead. Okay, ask the question. Any restrictions to serving in the country's armed forces? That's your question? No, sir. As a matter of fact, we are supposed to honor the government of the country that we are in, no matter where. And so my father was in the British other rank during World War II. You will see that one of the highest General Field Marshal Manekshaw was a Zarathustri. He was a Field Marshal of India. And you will, and what's interesting, very interesting, you'll find this, is that when we fought the Greeks at Marathon, it's the water battle, all our admirals and generals, the male guys got defeated and captured, but the only admiral who was a female, she got her way out of there and got back to Iran. And it's there in the history.